Well, here you are. You have made it all the way through making your own helmet. You've sanded, primed, painted, resanded, and bondoed your way to success. Oh, wait, we haven't done that yet. Well, then you're all in luck because that's what this last stage of this project is for. The goal with this video is to go through the final stages of a helmet, and this will allow me to show you my all-time favorite product I've come across in my time of prop making, which is Bondo Filler Spot Putty. As I mentioned in the previous video, Bondo Filler and Spot Putty will become your best friend in a stage like this. So with Bondo, you really don't need to use a lot of it, and that is one of its best qualities. The fact you can have a versatile paste that you could spread with your finger and not need a gigantic ever-growing blob of it to be effective is a lifesaver. In some instances, you can cover an entire helmet in Bondo. However, given the availability of the product in some areas and the overall cost, I find using it to cover the major imperfections is the key to proper success. Once you've applied the appropriate amount of primer and Bondo, I'll leave that up to you to decide how much is enough, and the Bondo has settled, you can go ahead and start sanding with at least a 300 grit sandpaper. You can work your way from 300 to 400, that's usually the best range to build off of. But your goal here is to have the Bondo match with the first layer of primer that we put on in the last video. You're trying to get a smooth transition. Now, when the sanding is finished and you are happy with the result, you may need to rinse and repeat a few times to get the finish just right. But with the current weather in my area, it's unfortunately too cold to spray paint today. So I'll show you the finish on my Captain Rex helmet, which was done with all of the steps you see now. I hope these videos were helpful to you, and please feel free to direct any questions to me in the comments. I'll work my best to answer them. You can also check out my Instagram and my TikTok. Instagram's probably the better place to reach me if you have a little more personal questions regarding to cosplay. Those will be where I would be most active when it comes to offering advice and tips for success. So with that short blurb out of the way, the final bit of the video here is where the actual primer comes into play. And I can't stress this enough, to not rush this phase. The most difficult thing when it comes to this portion is fixing a mistake once you've begun to finish the helmet. Overall, the more time you take in the rough phase, the better off your finishing phase will be. After all of the sanding I did in the video on the Bondo and the primer, I still ended up with a few areas of imperfections that will have to be fixed. And in the end, that will happen time and time again, especially starting out for the first scenario. You will never get it right the first time. There's almost never been a point in the 3 years I've been doing this now where I have not managed to not have secondary fixes that need to happen after I've gone through the finishing phase. That's just a common occurrence. So don't stress too much if you get to that point and you feel something that does go wrong over and over again. That's part of the trade. And it's part of the trade-off for doing this. You get cool sets of armor, but you don't get them without putting in the work, and you don't get them without the mistakes. So mistakes happening, they're not mistakes. They're opportunities to learn. And that's the important thing with them, is you need to see them that they're not something that went wrong, but they're something that you didn't know before, and you need to work to learn that now, which is why I make these, because I want somebody getting into this for the first time to have an easy time learning to do this, as opposed to struggling through so much of the finite details of it. So in the sense, that's all I have for today's video. That's really all I need to go into in terms of talking about it. But what I want to show off is a bit of the differences between finished and unfinished. You know, I got my crosshair helmet, I got my Rex helmet. This whole shelf is basically my crosshair, except for the bottom. That's the rest of my Mando suit. But in terms of a finished product, when you're looking at this helmet, this is 3 weeks worth of work. And for 3 weeks worth of work, this is fairly impressive. Even, you know, we've got a little bit of imperfections here at the dome of the helmet, couple on the side. But for pushing this through a 3 week project, this honestly has my expectations risen for the way Bondo works and the way I'm learning how to do these props. Like, this is nothing compared to the finish on my Captain Rex helmet. I'll pull it down here, because this was a helmet I covered entirely in Bondo. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like I mentioned, it's a bit of a different fact to deal with. And it's not as cost effective as doing it the way we did the Phase 2 helmet, because it uses so much of the Bondo that I find it's not exactly worth doing on a large scale. I mean, you can do it, that's totally up to you, but I would prefer to do it in pieces the way we did this one, as opposed to that. So looking at it, you know, like I say, in 3 weeks, this is pretty good because I have so many projects that I'm working on. These lightsabers I still haven't finished. I have these left. But this is from going, you know, this is a raw 3D print, what I'm holding. So going from a raw 3D print to a almost finished helmet in 3 weeks is very impressive because normally I wouldn't take anywhere near that short of a time span to do a project like this. So you can do all kinds of thing with these. Like this is a commission I'm working on for a friend of mine because, you know, who doesn't love Halo? But in terms of this and the Rex helmet, both of these, they have a similar finish, and this one has way less Bondo on it. This is pretty much all filler primer that I've been doing this helmet with. So you can get to a point like this without the Bondo. It just comes to a point of how much work you're willing to put in. But I have so many projects on the go between what I have on the shelf, what I've got in raw prints, the new cosplay I have working on my printer right now. I have no shortage of things to do and no shortage of experiences to learn from with this, which is one of my all-time favorite things about doing cosplay is you can learn so much just by doing it. And the more you do it, the more you learn. And with learning it, it's like any other thing. I didn't get to the point I got to with these armor sets in a few months. This is all 3 years so far. And with the two helmets that I'm making here and the new cosplay, these are all going to be learning experiences for me to find new ways to finish, find new things to try, new things to experiment with. There's no shortage of options when it comes to doing a cosplay or prop making in general. So, my best advice to you is to just try it. Just go out, do it, start it, and learn. And feel free, by all means, if you have questions about what kind of hardware to buy, what kind of printers to buy, I have absolutely no trouble throwing out variations and options for you to choose from because there are so many out there. And I would love for you to start getting into this. And if you start getting into this, I'd love for you to show me. But that's all for today's video.